Ready to go? You got anything else?
No, we're ready.
All right, Patreons, thanks for joining us for the pregame, and here we go.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Jim has been doing great on his goal of eating healthy. Taking this as a personal attack, McDonald's has issued their response. Starting October 7th, McDonald's is officially bringing back the McRib, the McCafe Donut Stick, and the Cinnamon Cookie Latte.
Oh, it hurts.
Where's your God now, Jim? And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
I just lost my religion. It hurts. And they announced 2 for $1 Big Macs. Those sons of bitches.
Oh, no. Oh, and Ulrich on Twitter has not been helpful.
Oh, my God.
She is.
Oh.
She's been
Vicious.
Do it, Jim. Do
Vicious.
it.
There was like 30 gifts. It was so mean. I had to stop checking my Twitter because she was making good points. She was like, there's only 1 million of them. Are you going to miss out on this?
Yeah.
It's only for 1 million people.
Yeah,
like,
fear of missing out.
Oh, God.
Everybody else is doing it.
Dude, you're not lying. Like Ronald McDonald has my number, and it's bad. I checked the mail to this week, and I like throw it all out on the kitchen table or whatever, and I get that big grip of like coupons that you can cut, and it's like everybody's running deals. Like Arby's is like, hey, give us $1 and get whatever you want. God, like I'm just looking at all this, like, okay, Jim, you can do this. Like, just stay away. But I've done okay. I've been okay.
That's what I've heard.
Not 100% success, but it's okay.
Do you want to give us an update?
Well, before we do, we should introduce our guest.
We should.
We have with us in the studio Frozen 49th Scoop.
Hello.
You can find a lot of her on our podcast. If you go back to Scoop Fest from last year, she asked us a question having to do with pyrophobia, right?
Correct.
Not pyromania, some have said. And also she's written into the show before with different questions having to do with imposter syndrome. She's shared about her own mental health before. We talked a lot about it on the Patreon side of the show if you want to go give us $1 and jump in on that. And then she also shared her own personal story during Mental Health Awareness Month. So Frozen 49th Scoop all the way from
Welcome to the
lovely
studio.
Alaska. Thank you for joining us.
It's awesome.
Here in sunny Las Vegas. So we're excited to have you. And then you also have a nutritionist background, which is going to be great because that totally factors in. So, like, approximately, given your nutrition background, how many Big Macs is too many Big Macs for me? Rounding to the nearest 10.
Bite.
Okay. That's a little under what I thought you were going to say.
It's going to get that pleasure center, and that second bite is going to be disgusting.
Can I tell you guys that right now, I am legit euphoric recall. Like, I may need, Jacob, lock the door. I'm not okay. I can't drive. I should not be walking.
Big Macs are disgusting.
They are.
You don't even know.
They are terrible.
Oh, why would you say that? They're
Because they are
so
terrible.
good. It's 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese on a sesame seed bun.
With onion.
But
It's
it's
got
like
everything the
it's
body
mushy.
needs.
It's those super skinny little like frozen patties,
And then you get that one little bite with that little piece
Cold
of gristle
center.
in it.
Yeah.
No.
and just shitty lettuce.
It's
and
2 for $1.
There's a reason.
I believe
it's
you're
two for-
overpaying.
Jim scoops off the lettuce, so that's not a fact.
Yeah, I'm not having that rabbit food.
What about the tomatoes? Those tomatoes look awful.
Guys, this is hard. Have you ever heard of a mini Mac? It's a McDonald's hack. You order a McDouble, and then you ask for an extra piece of toasted bun added to it with lettuce and special sauce because that's all free. And then you pay for a McDouble, but you get a Big Mac because it's essentially a Big Mac.
Yeah.
What is the price difference?
Health-wise or monetary?
Monetary.
I pay a pretty steep price, to tell you the truth. I don't know.
I mean, that
it's
price
under
difference
$1.
can't be.
It's not significant.
It can't be more than like what, 8 cents?
But the personal pride of having beaten the system. That's guys, I'm not doing great.
You're an idiot.
Right now, I'm kind of falling backward. So you were asking me about my calories.
Yes.
All right. So I have it here. I've been food journaling for Sober October.
Yep.
Again, my goal was 1,500 calories daily. And last week we had kind of had a discussion about like, well, could you even go under that? And so here's what I've been doing. I've been doing okay. So today, as we're recording this, is October 6th, Sunday. October 1st was on a Tuesday, so we've only had 6 days.
Yeah.
First day, clocked in, finished the day, 1,060 calories.
Okay. There you go.
1,060. Second day, 1,100. Not bad. Thursday, the third, 860 was my total calories.
860 calories.
800. I kind of went the Jacob plan. I don't eat. I don't eat during breakfast or lunch. I eat at dinner. But what I used to do was go nuts because I get home and like, it's time for gym. And like, I would just go eat everything in the fridge. I'd order food. And so like, I'm not doing that. I'm having like one helping of a thing and then stopping. And like, that is only so much, and then it's not like the worst kind of food. Okay, but hold on in your praise because Friday got weird.
No one was praising.
I mean, I felt it. I felt like there was a
there was literally no praise.
Jacob, I thought we were having a moment. I was like validating your theory. I felt like you were with me. All right, Friday the 4th. This is where Jim went a little nuts. So the hockey game was on.
Right.
It was us versus San Jose.
Yep.
And I lost it. So I went 2,900 calories on that day.
So you made up for the other days.
I'm pretty sure. If you do the math, it probably made up. So I fell pretty short on that one. I was over by about 1,500 calories. And then yesterday was Saturday. I went to a football game. I went to the UNLV football game. I didn't eat all day until that damn football game. And then I wanted beer, and I wanted fries, and I wanted pretzel. And so I came in at 2,100 for the day.
Okay.
So I had 5 good days, because Tuesday's when the month started, but I actually started for myself on Monday the 30th, and that day was also like 800 calories, a really good day. So I had a really good week, and then the weekend fell down, and so
I think I can safely speak for Nick when I say that you're terrible.
That's exactly. Nick thought that before I told him the calories.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did you say something else? Because I wasn't listening to anything you said. Just a general reminder.
Are you guys still on the show?
Yeah.
I didn't even know we were recording right now.
Okay, so
to let you know that
for Frozen 49th, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
With your nutrition background,
can
somebody cut too many calories? Like if he's used to a 3,000 calorie diet, is there a point where you can go too far the opposite direction, and what happens if you do that?
So there's a lot of factors. Obviously genetics, any kind of diabetes or anything like that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But just for the person off the street,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, your body can only, burn so much of its stores at a given time because you're not in starvation mode with quotations.
Okay. That's kind of like a pseudo theory. It's like there's some truth to it, but it's not exactly this fact thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people put too much onto it.
Yeah.
800 isn't bad.
Right.
I mean, but are you getting lightheaded? Do you have tingling in your extremities?
Right.
Are you drinking enough water?
No, I am not. No.
When they change their diet, they forget to drink water.
But guys, in fairness, we have high calorie water in my house.
Okay.
So I'm trying to.
How do you have a high
diet?
It's hard. It's hard water.
Well, it's also mixed with chocolate milk.
Yeah.
So it's a very
It's 50-50 water and Nesquik.
Yeah.
No, but that's actually a good point, because one of the things that's really important is drinking a whole bunch of water if you're planning on losing weight.
Okay.
So one of the things that I did is when I got into this is I would actually take rubber bands and I'd put it around my water bottle. So if I was going to drink like 5 of these per day, I would have 5 rubber bands. So every time I filled it up, I just took one off.
Dude, that is so much water.
Yeah, so then I knew how many I had left.
You drink 5?
No, I don't. No,
Oh.
I mean, I probably 3 of these a day, which still I don't think is enough.
Well, I have to drink extra because of the stenosis. I have to keep everything hydrated. So I drink, I don't remember what the average is, but I drink about an average and a half of water. And I'm only 5 feet tall.
Right.
So needless to say, I'm going to the restroom a lot.
It's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
So definitely have to balance that out. But
you need to drink more water.
As we think about Sober October, progress, not perfection, but I did get through my week, but my weekend really
Pretty good week.
It was a good
All
week.
right, so what were some of the takeaways?
The
What'd you learn?
triggers. So definitely in the post game here on a Sunday evening, when I look back on what got me, I didn't drink when I was, or I didn't, not just drinking. I didn't eat. I didn't eat when I was bored. I did a good job of that. I resisted the desire to hit my trigger points on the way home because that
I
road.
really thought he was going to say his wife.
I resisted hitting my wife. She is really happy with my diet.
I don't know why.
She's really happy.
I really thought
She's noticed a lot of results. That's first words out of her mouth. I love this new diet. But on the weekend, man, sports. Like, the sports get me. It is so hard. Because what I'm noticing is I'm eating, I'm indulging when I'm excited. And so I'm happy, and it's this frivolous atmosphere, and it's, go team. And that's when I'm falling. And it's like, it's hard to keep discipline when it's social and it's fun and there's an event. So that caused both days of downfall.
So if you go back for our folks on Patreon, I've got that worksheet. It's actually linked to the episode. So you have to go on to patreon.com/therapy, go to the episode, and there's an attachment. It's a PDF.
Yes.
And on there, I think the last page is the triggers dealing with emotions.
Yes.
So that's one of the big things that people don't really think about.
Because I thought it was, here's where, when I did your homework the first time around, I expected the emotions like boredom, and I expected the emotion of feeling less than. When I feel insecure, I tend to eat. I did not think about the happiness side, that when I am excited, and I am like, suspensed and excited, and go team, I have this cheers mentality of like, we're all in this together. Let's eat. And it's like, let's drink a beer and it's that. So I didn't expect that. So that was a huge takeaway for me this week. And I'm glad you brought up Patreon. So if you are paying attention to the Sober October thing, you were with us in the first episode and you haven't necessarily jumped on Patreon yet to follow all this, here's what you missed. In the last week on our Patreon, Nick posted a handwritten curriculum that I actually am following. That was my first week homework, so we referenced it in week 1, and it was posted onto our Patreon for everybody to download and participate on their own. There was also a journal entry from me posted on there, a verbal journal entry, so it's actual audio, 15-minute clip of me processing Nick's homework, thinking about my real life. I taped it on the drive to work, and then Nick actually posted a 15-minute reaction to that, giving me tips, giving me advice, and giving the general audience some feedback on that. And so that's what's been going on Patreon this last week, and we're going to do even more of that next week, where you will also get today's homework posted in physical form for you to download, as well as my journal entries and Nick's reactions. So lots of stuff on our Patreon. This is the time to jump in with us for this month. Kick us $1 so you can unlock it and participate, guys. Get healthy. Do something that you can target for the month and work on for yourself. It's not all food-based. I mean, that's what I'm directing Nick's techniques at. But he's writing it for general use. Right. So whether that's cutting back on drinking or smoking, gambling, video games, hitting your spouse, these are all the things that Nick's stuff could be effective for.
Hitting Jim's spouse.
If you're lining up outside to hit my wife, please stop. She needs time. She needs time to rest. So that launches us into the new A block.
Well, and actually, we got a letter.
Oh,
we should
about
probably
last
address
week.
This first. So somebody wrote in, another anonymous scoop wrote in, asking a question, because I had brought up the idea with the whole triggers that the basic concept of this is that in neurology, they say that neurons that fire together get wired together. Right. So if two things are constantly occurring, the brain makes a connection between those. It's for survival. So our brain becomes more efficient and functions at a higher level. Right. So we don't have to constantly relearn the same thing.
Right.
Our brain just automatically knows, and it creates these shortcuts.
Yes.
Which is good, except for in those situations where it's creating shortcuts to things that we're trying to eliminate, such as I feel good, I need food.
Right.
Those two neurons firing together, that's what you want to break.
Oh, God, they are so deeply wired, dude.
Right. So our scoop friend wrote in asking about, okay, so once this is wired together and once these neurons are connected, how do you break that connection?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a few different ways that this can be done. There's actually several studies that have been done. Do you remember the Little Albert study? This was back in like the 1950s, I think.
Yeah, I was like 5 when that came out.
Yeah, you were a little kid.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean, you were in your 20s at that point.
Right. I was on the board that decided whether or not they could do the study.
To publish this, you're IHB or IRB board.
But what's funny is that, so we learned about these connections, and what they were trying to do is they're trying to, number one, create a fear response to
Oh,
something that
this one.
wouldn't normally be related to
Little
fear.
Albert was that study where they triggered the kid into
Yes.
fear. Yeah.
They created a fear response. So they wanted to do something that they wouldn't normally be afraid of.
Right.
So they used a white fluffy bunny.
Yeah.
And what they would do is little Albert was the subject, and he
Yeah.
was, I don't remember how old he was, but he was a
little.
toddler.
Yeah,
he
he
was
was little.
just old enough to sit up.
Yeah.
That's it. So they would give him a white fluffy bunny, and then somebody would sneak up behind him, and they would take a wrench and hit it up against a lead pipe.
Yeah.
So it'd make this
It's a loud clang.
It would
horrible.
No,
These
and
were
this
the
is-
dark
yes.
ages of psychology.
And this is
it
why-
is now illegal to do
This
this.
This
is
is
funny.
Clockwork Orange.
Oh, it's bad. No,
This
it's
is-
exactly
this
as
is
bad
the
as it
reason-
sounds.
Just Clockwork Orange.
This
Yeah.
is the reason why we know about this, is because they teach us to intro students all the time about the ethics in research.
This study is now in the column of here's what you never
Yeah,
do.
don't-
don't
this-
ever do this.
along with the Milgram experiment.
yeah,
and
no
a few
torturing
others.
children
Right.
anymore.
Hit
Right.
Jim's wife. Don't do this.
And Janelle, I'm sorry that this whole show is turning into
She doesn't
abusing you.
listen.
Yeah, she has
Anyway.
no clue.
So here's the thing. So basically, what they did is they would create this response. So then what happened is, anytime something white and fluffy came around little Albert,
Yeah.
he would freak out,
He'd recoil.
even when there wasn't
Yes.
a negative response or something negative happening. Right.
Yes.
So the whole idea behind this was, then they wanted to go into, how do we break the connection once it's established?
Once it's established.
Well, that didn't happen, because what ended up happening is little Albert's mother, logically,
Yeah. Said
was
stop
pissed off
torturing my son.
and removed him from the study.
Yeah, the
right?
feds kicked down the door
Yeah.
at the Department of
So-
Psychology and
Right.
beat the shit out of everybody.
So he got removed. But ideally, what
Terrifying again.
I know. So what would have happened?
So to answer your
if you were
question,
going to-
we don't know because
No, no,
somebody
no.
stopped science.
No, there's different ways of doing this.
I'm not
okay.
into psychology.
We'll start with a bad way.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a bad way, but there's what's called flooding.
Yeah.
Okay, so flooding means that you are going to intentionally expose yourself to a super high amount
Yes.
of whatever this thing is that's triggering you,
Yes.
and then you just sit and deal with it.
So
So you allow your anxiety to skyrocket, and
we-
then naturally to bring
I want to
it back down.
grab that out of the air because
Okay.
with us is Frozen.
Yes.
Frozen 49th joined us for Scoop Fest and shared about her pyrophobia, her fear of fire. And at the time, she had gone with us to this big event at King's Tournament, or what's the thing? Tournament of Kings. At the Excalibur. It's a medieval times kind of show, and there's a lot of fire that goes on there, and she had to step out of that show because she was so triggered. Partly what she's here to do in Vegas tomorrow. She's going to go back to the show, and she and I have been messaging each other, talking about what she's doing to prepare for this. And I sent her a link to what we call in vivo therapy, which is anytime you're intentionally exposing yourself to something so that you can learn to cope with it. And in that article, I don't know if you had a chance to click it, is this concept of flooding.
Yeah.
So exactly what Nick's talking about is what you're going to do tomorrow, where instead of being like tasting the trigger and running from it, you're sort of intentionally sitting with it and delaying your response. Now, you may ultimately need to respond, and that's okay. The goal of that exposure is to delay the response. And we do the same thing in OCD work as well, which is to get those neurons to decouple from each other by causing endurance. And so by you facing the thing that's triggering you and delaying a reaction to it, that's causing the wiring to sort of differentiate from its old pattern.
Right. I mean, you're basically putting space between the stimulus and the conditioned response.
Yes.
So, like in little Albert's example, if they would have just if they would have put him in a room full of 100 white bunnies,
Right.
but never made a loud noise, that's the other
Exactly.
piece. So there was no conditioned
The
response.
wires
to it.
start to decouple from the fear
Right.
because these things
So,
aren't doing it.
exactly. He
If
starts to
Pavlov would have rang
disassociate.
the bell and then not fed the dogs right afterward, and he could undo, and he ultimately did.
Right.
You
Well,
can undo the same response.
and it would take a long time.
It does.
Like,
It's
but
repetitive.
that's what
Yeah.
flooding essentially is. By flooding with a super high amount of the stimulus,
Right.
it's going to speed it up a little bit faster.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't a good. Like, say, for example, if we were working with somebody who is addicted to crack cocaine,
Yeah.
we're not going to do flooding.
No. No.
We're not going to put them in a room full of crack cocaine.
No, that's not.
and then be like, okay, just don't use
We
this.
call that contraindicated
Right.
in the business. Contraindicated.
So that's not always a good response.
and we're not going to throw Frozen into like a fire pit and be
Right.
like, you will get this or you will perish.
Right.
It's going to be fine, Frozen. You're going to have a great time. It's going to be really good.
Now,
And just
there's-
enjoy yourself.
There's another way of doing this, which is called systematic desensitization.
Yes.
This is a really good way of doing it. And actually, if something that Frozen 49th could have done, we probably could have started this like months ago.
Yeah.
Which is that you expose yourself to really, really small amounts of the stimulus.
Yes.
But then you're also, at the same time, working on de-escalation or coping strategies, right?
So it is getting colder.
Yeah.
And one of my neighbors has a fire pit.
Okay. There it is.
So I've been
kind of getting nearer, watching it happen.
And then, of course, your clothes get smoky. And so I've been kind of giving myself that scent of it's okay to have the smell because you're all right during the, and trying to give happy memories to that smell and that trigger.
Yes, and that's actually the third thing that I'm going to bring up. I'm going to come back to that one. All right, but this is really good. So one of the things that you could do with systematic desensitization is it's really important to understand and be very self-aware of your current anxiety level.
Right.
So on a scale of 0 to 10, you identify the point that you feel like you've lost control. So maybe that's a 7, and then you're going to go a few steps below that. So maybe let's set our target at 5.
Right.
Right. So what Frozen 49th could do is maybe stand by the kitchen window and look into the neighbor's yard where there's fire.
Right.
And look at it from that distance. And maybe that'll bring her up to a 5.
Setting those milestones.
And then, once you identify that you're at a 5, then you practice those coping skills to bring it back down.
Yes.
You continue that exposure until exposing yourself to that fire through the kitchen window only brings you up to maybe a 2.
Yes.
And then now we're going to go outside.
Yes.
Right? And just right outside the door and allow ourselves to get up to a 5. And then we work ourselves down and we keep getting closer and closer.
And so to the writer, I want to kind of orient you to what Nick's talking about. So that method, or what we call exposure therapy or delayed reaction therapy, or flooding in this case,
systematic desensitization.
Please understand that what we're describing here is a method that we'll use in OCD work. It's a method that we might use in social anxiety work, getting somebody to kind of tiptoe back toward the thing that's scaring them. But also, please understand, this is not in any way the method that we would use in the context of Sober October if we're talking about substance abuse. Some people misunderstand that that's a method, and so they might think, okay, I'm trying to quit alcohol, so I need to be able to just have a little, or I need to go sit in a bar and just be near it. No, contraindicated. That is never what we would do. So everything we've described are good ways to decouple neurology and decouple the neural wiring. But the alternative thing I want to propose to you and just kind of fill in the blank for the rest of that picture there, what we're describing here is neuroplasticity, the tendency of neurons to wire together and to physically change their geographic location in your brain according to the behaviors that you're asking them to do.
Right.
And so essentially another form of this is just changing literally anything. And that's essentially what we do with sobriety stuff.
And getting into the third piece is what I would do in a situation like what you're talking about.
Right.
If we're talking about somebody who, like, we don't want to expose an alcoholic to alcohol.
Right. That is not healthy.
Right. So what we're going to do now is kind of the third thing, which Frozen 49th already kind of hit on, which is we're going to create a new connection.
Yes.
Right? So we've got, think of these two neurons that are connected, and this connection is really strong and really fast.
Yes.
It's the same way as like a river. Right?
Yeah.
Water is going to go through the path of least resistance. It's going to take the fastest route from one point to another.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the first neuron and we're going to connect it now to something completely new.
Yes.
And we're going to start creating a new connection. But our brain instinctively is going to go with the old one until the new connection is stronger and faster.
Speaking of which, there's a really great cartoon video that explains this. I will link it in the show notes on all platforms. Open up the episode description right now, click on the YouTube link that I've posted, and it'll give you a quick 1-minute breakdown of exactly what Nick just described for visual purposes. But essentially, Nick, that's what we're doing with me, is that I associate right now celebration with food. So what we're going to do is I've got to engineer a new way for me to celebrate, something else I can do alternative to my old behavior.
Right.
The more I do that, the more I am reinforcing the neural connection. I am now firing together two things: celebration, new behavior. When you pair those together, the brain now starts to wire away from your old way. So the short answer to the writer on this one is ultimately the way you change the neurons, the way you decouple them and pair them with new things is through intentional behavior change and thinking change. Mm-hmm. By willpower and by guidance, we can structure you so that the neurons will follow what you intentionally ask them to do. They'll also influence you in a direction that you've been going in previously, which is why it's so hard to change a bad habit.
Right.
But the more you willfully pull yourself away from that, they will eventually follow.
Right.
And that is the change.
Right. And we've done this before with folks in rehab trying to break connections.
Yes.
Right. You know, they will identify someone who has been smoking meth. Aluminum foil might be a trigger for them.
Yes.
Right. So, right. And so
she gets it.
I'm a meth survivor, remember?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do remember
so, yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
you gotta. I think the first step is getting away from those. But thankfully, when it comes to drug paraphernalia, you don't just see it at the grocery store. So at least
Right.
you have. Hey, this poor guy has to drive down the street and look at all these things. At least you have
Right.
that space.
So, and if you do have that connection, if you do have that that thing that has been a trigger,
Yes.
one of the things is we do this a lot through cognitive behavioral therapy, where we catch that thought, the automatic thought, and then we have to challenge that automatic thought, replace it. Right. So, if I see aluminum foil, and then I have to remind myself, okay, wait, nope. That's not what it was meant for.
Right.
Reynolds Wrap didn't design this for the purposes I was using it for.
But without that training,
I use it for this.
without
you
that
create new
therapeutic
connection.
training, we naturally slip back into this invisible emotional stream that we didn't notice was happening, like me.
Right.
Until I sat back and started acknowledging, wait, when I am happy, when I'm excited, when sports are going on, I do this. It just
Exactly.
naturally happened. Now I'm aware of it, so I can start to intentionally engineer a decoupling, which is going to fade into...
Which is why
Yep.
lesson 1 was about
Identify.
awareness.
Yes. Building
I
awareness.
know what I'm doing.
Hey, I'm following along. So, maestro, so professor, lesson 2, building
Okay.
on that now that we've achieved some more awareness, Jim has accomplished quite a bit of awareness in this last week. Had
Right.
some victories, had some failures, learning from the failures, not giving up and saying, oh my gosh, I had 2 bad days of calories, screwed the whole project. But saying, no, progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Keep at it. Do your best every day. Every day, one day at a time, it's a new start. So what's lesson 2? What are we learning this week?
The first thing, once we've identified awareness, now we need to know, well, what do I do with this newfound awareness?
Right.
So now that Jim understands, emotion, happy, sports equals I need to eat. He's
Right.
now aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now what do we do?
What do
with
you do?
it, right? So one of the things that we had you do in lesson 1 is we had you identify all of these different, we can call them triggers, we can call them whatever, but essentially they're areas of high vulnerability.
Yes.
Areas of high risk. Things that make you more vulnerable to returning to this old pattern of behavior. So broken down by people, places, situations, thoughts, and emotions, right? So now that we've got that broken down, now the next thing is we need to figure out, what do we do with all of these?
Right.
Now, the simplest thing to do is to avoid them
Yes, entirely.
entirely.
Yeah.
However, that's completely unrealistic.
Well, I've done it with some things.
With some you can,
Yeah.
with some you can't.
Yeah.
So that's the next step. The next step is dividing them up into those 2 categories.
Okay.
What are the things that I can just avoid?
Okay.
All right, because then our solution's really simple. We just avoid them.
Yeah, stay out
And
of
then
that
what
bar.
are the things that we do that we can avoid,
Yes.
right? So if, are you going to stop watching football?
No.
Okay, so that's
I literally just checked the
unavoidable.
scores.
I know.
But no, your first category, avoidable. This weekend, I had some downtime, and or it was on Friday, I had downtime, and I almost messaged you to say, hey, let's go get some sushi. And I thought about that, but I was like, no, that is an avoidable thing. I can just not do that. If I don't go sit in a sushi place, I won't end up getting, but I totally thought I'm just going to go to a sushi place and get like one roll. But I don't trust myself to do that.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is leading into. I actually wrote a lot about this in the next lesson. No.
Oh.
I wrote about my experience working with people in early recovery.
Right.
All right. Because one of the biggest issues that I notice that people struggle with when I see this, it makes me so nervous, and it's things that it's a lack of awareness or understanding of the mental state that they're in now versus the mental state they will be in later.
Right.
Okay.
I know
so
exactly where you're going.
I always use the analogy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I see people really struggle with is Dr. Jekyll wants the positive change. Dr.
Yeah.
Jekyll's in charge
Oh,
and
yeah.
is like, yes, absolutely.
This
I'm
is
doing
every
this.
one of us on December 31st.
Exactly.
Well, really, January 1.
Right.
After the hangover's done and you're like, I'm getting right, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to do well. That's Dr. Jekyll.
Yes.
That's, I got this, I want this, I'm going to be healthy.
But what people don't realize, they screw up in one of two ways. Either number one, they think that Dr. Jekyll's always in charge.
Yeah.
Okay. Or number two, they think that when Mr. Hyde takes over, that Mr. Hyde's going to make good decisions.
No, he's Mr. Hyde.
Right. So one of the things we have to understand is after we've created these triggers and these vulnerabilities, that when we put ourselves into that position or into that situation or that environment, Hyde is now in charge, and Hyde is calling the shots.
So you can't anticipate that your best mind will be with you, which
Exactly.
goes to my sushi example. Because
Yes.
I know that if I was more of a rookie about this, I would have said, well, I can go to the sushi place and have one roll. There's nothing wrong with one roll. But what that fails to account for is, sure, Jekyll, you think that you can just go to that place and that you'll stay in control. When you get there, though, you won't be in control anymore because you're going to be in the presence of so many triggers that you're going to fade into your other self. And that other self doesn't count the one roll. It goes, well, one roll is $13. For $26, I could have all you can eat sushi. I'm really losing money if I don't destroy myself. Let me go ahead and do that.
Right.
You know, and that's what will happen.
Exactly.
And so it's anticipating that mind shift and just avoiding the whole damn thing together, which is what you're talking about. The two categories of avoidable versus unavoidable.
Right.
Sushi restaurant, you can just choose not to go there. And you can avoid the whole trigger process and have a successful day.
Now, one point that I want to make on the avoidable category, and then we'll go back to the unavoidable. On the avoidable category, I know a lot of people are probably reacting to this and they're saying, like, so I have to give this up for the rest of my life?
Right.
No, you don't. Another metaphor that I like to use is video games. It's kind of like how levels or weapons or things become, they're locked, and then they
Until
become
you
unlocked.
earn them. Right.
It's kind of the same way with that. Think of like all of these vulnerabilities. Imagine there being like a risk level bar.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got a skill level bar.
Yes.
And you can't unlock that level until your skill level is
You
higher
have to
than the
upgrade.
risk level.
Until you've
right?
leveled up enough to take on those challenges, it's not time. And you
Right.
might say, well, how do I know? Your therapist will tell you. That's what I do.
Right.
And this is funny because this happens all the time in early recovery rehab. People are like, I need to be able to sit in a bar with my friends and not be triggered. So I'm going to do that this weekend. And we're like, no, Johnny, you're not. And they're like, well, I need to eventually do this. Yeah, you're right. Eventually. Now's not the time. Your skills aren't there yet.
Before you plan on beating the odds, you have to make sure you can survive the odds beating you.
That's right. That's right.
So
if you're not ready for that face-off, don't do it. That's level 10 boss.
Right.
You're at level 2. You will lose.
Yes.
Right? And so we try to set you up for victory.
And I wrote a little bit about this too, how all of these changes that we're working on require a lot of honesty and humility.
Yes.
You have to be very self-reflective and you have to understand where your weak spots are. You have to acknowledge that you have weak spots and you have to play the game towards defending those weak areas and knowing what to do.
And you need coaching.
Right.
Because you don't know your own weak spots. But whenever you go to your corner and talk to your coach, whether that's a therapist or accountability partner or your group, those people are the ones who are supposed to give you that objective opinion of like, hey, as you're telling me this bad idea that you have, I'm recognizing it as a bad idea. I don't think you should do that.
Now, going back to the unavoidable things, what we want to do is we want two things. We want to be able to anticipate, and we want to be able to prepare.
So the football game, I went to a UNLV football game last night. It is avoidable in that I could just not go, but I went with my family. It's an activity that was appropriate.
Yeah, and we don't want anybody to just lock themselves in the closet for...
No, so that was an unavoidable thing. It was on the calendar for months. Like we knew we were going to go. And so we went. And so we went to our football game with our whole family. And so now I'm there. So we'll classify that for the purposes of your homework today as unavoidable. So then you're saying that what should I have done to prepare for that?
What you should have done to prepare, number one, is you have to be able to anticipate. So in the days leading up to this, you have to look ahead and be like, okay, I know I'm going to the UNLV football game.
Yes.
The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Right.
What have I done every other time I've gone to a UNLV football game?
Yeah, study the game tape, see what I've done in the past.
So your body naturally, once you get there, is prepared for that same thing to happen again.
Yep. And oh boy, I was triggered all day.
I'm sure
I was
you were.
thinking about those rebel dogs. And let me just point this out. This is another thing that there's a thing about relapse work that will if you talk to people in the sober community, they'll say, well, you didn't relapse when you had that beer. You relapsed way before that beer. And what they mean is your brain started creating opportunity for you to relapse before you ever did it. Here's an example of how I did that.
Okay.
Before the game, the day of, like the game's at 7:30, kickoff's at 7:30. Buddy, that morning, I went to the bank and got cash so that I would have a pocket full of cash when I got there. So I wouldn't have to be bothered by getting into the lines. I wanted to be able to get stuff from the guy walking around. And so
Healthy
I was
stuff, right?
Yeah. And he wasn't selling broccoli. And so I was ready. And I had a pocket full of cash ready to go. I even got it down to like singles and fives so that I'd be ready to go. And I was in 100% of my brain, I know what I'm going to do with that money.
Right.
I'm going to get bad food.
Yeah.
That was absolutely my plan.
Right.
Before I even had my first bite.
So the anticipation and preparation has to start long before that.
Yes.
Right. So anticipating what are going to be the danger zones, the vulnerability areas.
So the man walking around saying beer, hot dogs, I have to anticipate that.
Yep.
And then make sure I don't have the ability to get from him.
And
so
that's
probably don't have that cash.
The second thing is the preparation. All right. So if I know that Mr. Hyde's going to be taking over, I need to disarm him before he takes over.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where we're going to start creating roadblocks.
Yes.
So we're going to intentionally make things more difficult for me to be able to do the things
if
that
I don't
I'm
have any
do
cash on me, I can't get anything from that dude.
And this is where also having support or having people around you who are going to help you on that goal can be very important. So one of the things that I'm doing in October is I'm cutting out sugar, okay? Which actually hasn't been that
difficult. Which is code for cocaine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sugar. But Laura and I actually went to get coffee this morning.
Okay.
And that is I already drank it, but that's a challenging part for me because I don't really like coffee. What I like is coffee flavored chocolate milk.
Right. God, I remember that at the rehab. I'm like, can I get you anything? You're like, yes, I want a mocha. Hold the coffee.
Yeah. But I mean, I do drink coffee now and I'll drink it black coffee, just plain black. But, when we went up to the counter, oh man, I was triggered because then I saw all the pastries that I really wanted, you know? And looking back, what I should have done is I should have prepared for that. And I should have given Laura the money, say, hey, could you go, get me an Americano or give me something like that. And she would have been happy to do it. She's on board, right? She's my support system. So therefore I would have not even been exposing myself to that. And I would have had any other option other than that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so preparing, so anticipating where you might fall, in my case, knowing I'm going to fail at that football game, and then not telling myself, oh, it'll be fine. Right. The same amount of resolve and power that I have to not stop at Carl's Jr. on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening, I'll have that same presence of mind at that football game on Saturday night. No, you won't. And you're not anticipating that Mr. Hyde's going to take over, and so you need to rob him of resources. If he has no bullets in the gun, he can't fire it. Right. And so you have to plot against yourself and play kind of chess.
Right.
And so that's where I could have gotten ahead of that and said, okay, Jim, you're going to watch the hockey game on Friday night. Okay, you know you're going to do that. How can we get ahead of that? Well, it's Friday night. I tend to order food for the family. That was tricky, bud, because it was like, okay, we're going to order food. We're in the house. We're going to watch these games. But I could have anticipated that situation and I guess gotten ahead of it. I could have eaten something healthy before the game. That way I was already full and I didn't want anything else.
And anything that you can do that's going to change the condition under which you used to watch it, anything you can do to make things different is actually going to make the process easier. So, for example, if you always watch the hockey game in your living room, actually watching the game in another room.
Right.
Just doing something that
or not wearing my jersey.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't feel like the full mode.
Right. So anything that is going to remind your brain things are different now.
Yep.
Right? This is a new way of doing it.
Yep. I love it, man. So that's my homework for the week.
That's it.
I'm going to work that. If you'd like to hear how my progress is going, you can jump down to patreon.com/therapy, sign up for as low as $1. You can hear me post my real live audio journal that I usually record on my drive. And I don't do it every day. I just do it about once a week to reflect on it. I'm going to be doing it this week. And then Nick usually posts a reaction to that, giving me feedback, advice, and coaching from the sidelines. And then updates about his own work, too, trying to quit cocaine. We're really proud of you, Nick.
Thank you.
No cocaine in your coffee this morning?
No.
Good job,
No,
buddy.
no.
Way to take it black.
Yeah.
That's how it's done. So,
Right.
Wonderful.
Exactly. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss how do I not take on my partner's stress. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's their producer sponsor is Smitty Scoop. Smitty would like to take this opportunity to point out that although he is 1-3 in the Pod Therapy Fantasy Football League, if he had played gym every week, he would be 4-0.
And I think he'd make it 5-0 this week. I think
Take that for what it's worth.
I think he's doing pretty good.
Go to hell, Smitty. You didn't. I don't even know what my record is. I don't think it's very good. I'm going to win this week, though. I feel like I'm looking good. If you'd like to join Smitty Scoop and make our show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question, how can I not take on my partner's stress?
Hey, guys. What can I do to support but not take on the frustration of somebody else? My girlfriend is in a nasty battle for custody of her kid. The kid's dad is a member of a cult that has multiple leaders serving jail time for pedophilia and child abuse. It looks like the court is not going her way. I am easily overwhelmed with what is going on. I want to help, but I'm afraid this issue will overwhelm me. Anonymous. Great question.
That is a good question.
Holy cow. I think one thing that I catch immediately just in the way it's phrased is being careful not to catastrophize, right? And not, yes, a cult. I mean, if we're fair, 100% of human organizations on Earth have become corrupt and tried to abuse their power, religion being no exception, and that's absolutely true. But like even the Catholic Church, if we, obviously not to take any shots at Catholic religion, but to just to point out, it's a human organization. There have been humans who have abused their power. There have been humans who have done pedophilic things. We want to be careful not to say, therefore, the entire institution is dangerous. So trying to get your custody of your kid, totally get that. But just to the writers, want to be careful that we don't, because that will cause anxiety. That will cause us to panic as if a child's in danger. When the fact that it's a cult, that's bad. Okay, fine. The cult has done bad things. Strike two, I get it. But let's be careful not to accidentally think that the child is in imminent danger, because that could cause us to overreact and do things like abduct the kid and run across state lines. Like, we don't want to see that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely don't want to do anything illegal.
Yeah. But I just want to point this out. Like, if you just because your child is associated with something, then taking it to the worst iteration of that thing, if you're not careful, you might accidentally conclude, therefore, child is in imminent risk of physical danger. And that's not necessarily what we're seeing. I want to be careful with that.
Yeah.
But good question, though. How do we not take on our partner's anxieties and fears, but still be supportive of them as they're going through something that's very emotional?
Yeah, and I've seen this in a lot of different ways, not just in custody battles, but just having somebody, a spouse or significant other that is always stressed at work.
Oh, right.
And comes home. And just wants to vent all this stuff. And as the support system, it's very difficult to not take on that stress. And then now, you notice that you start getting stressed every time this person comes home.
You don't want to talk to them.
Yeah, it's like, here we go.
Here we go. What's wrong this week?
Yeah. Do you have any advice?
I do. I think that I like, first off, that you're an empathetic person, writer. And I really want to acknowledge that and tell you I love that about you. And this is a message. I have a love letter in my mind right now to all the empaths, all those who listen to the show that are the folks that naturally care and they naturally connect to another person and they tend to feel other people's feelings. And this is something I think Nick and I have worked with a lot of interns, a lot of future therapists, who that tends to be what the field attracts. We don't tend to attract cold-hearted, non-caring, indifferent people. We tend to attract...
Yeah, I'm very rare in that case.
You are. You're the only person who literally has no soul that works in our field, which is a great advantage. I think, you walk home every day whistling. I don't even know what happened. How was your day? Great! But for the rest of us, we might get home and rock ourselves back and forth in the shower, having real days. And I know that that's something that veteran therapists have to go through. It's an evolution that you learn from a rookie standpoint that you grow in. So how do empaths like me, how do empaths like you, the writer, how do all of us who feel the feels of others be both supportive but not necessarily burdened by their stuff? And I would come back to an earlier episode that Nick and I did on cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the things that we talked about in CBT was what are called cognitive distortions, which are false ways of seeing ourselves in the world that are not actually accurate. And on that list, at the very last one that we did on that list, was one called personalization. And personalization is apologizing for the rain. It's whenever we feel somehow emotionally guilty or responsible when somebody else in our life is unhappy or is struggling with something. And so I get this. Like if I come home and I talk to my wife and she's having a bad day and she's frustrated and stressed, even though I 100% didn't do any of that, I feel on pins and needles. Like, oh, I need to, like almost as if I have done something. Like I feel guilty and I almost feel like I need to, I know I shouldn't apologize to her, but I feel like I need to like be really careful to make everything right because I feel weird and like I feel unsettled at the end of the night. If my wife goes to bed angry, I feel like triggered. Like, okay, are we okay? Like, did I do anything wrong? So it's something that I get personally.
Yeah, and I get that as well. As hearing you kind of talk about this, one of the things that kind of reminds me of is, and the example I used was something I'm very familiar with because this is something that kind of Laura talks about a lot, is frustration with work.
Frustration with work,
And I realize that I kind of catch myself focusing on, how does this affect me?
You'll feel it.
And that's where my stress comes in, is because I'm thinking, how does this affect me?
Yeah.
So in our marriage, because hypomanic, extremely emotional, we have two responses. I'm sorry, which is your personal blame, and I'm sorry that you're having a bad day. So that you know that the other person's acknowledging you,
Right.
but not making fun out of that, but still kind of letting it wash over them, going, okay, you're done. I'm sorry that happened, other than I screwed up and I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, that's a good one.
But differentiating between what your partner's going through and being careful not to personalize that, because Ryder, and to all my empaths out there, that is an error. That is a cognitive distortion. And it will cause you to suffer. It will also cause you to not be facing reality for what it is. And if you have a partner who's struggling, it's okay for you to hurt for them. But it's quite a different thing to own that as if you caused it, or to allow that to kind of gum up your works. And so I want you to be empathic enough that if your partner's struggling, you are not necessarily having your best day. You know, I'm okay with that you're partnered with them. But I want you to do that self-talk of at least checking in with yourself and asking yourself, hey, what triggered this? Can I give my emotion word a name? Can I use an emotion word to describe what I'm feeling? Can I notice where that showed up? How did that show up in this conversation? When did I start feeling personally scared? Or when did I start feeling personally sad? Or when did I start feeling personally guilty? And then can I check in with that and say, okay, but what's the truth? Right? What's the truth? And that's that self-talk. That's that asking for evidence. Hey, take that thought to court, as Nick says. Did I personally put her child in danger? No. Am I part of the team trying to assist her? Yes. Is there anything I can do right now that would love on my spouse and give her something? I'm limited. You know, I don't have a lot of access to changing the situation. So all I can really do is sit in this moment with her. And that's a hard thing to do, and it is inherently something that touches you, and you are going to be triggered by it, and you are going to be affected by it. The challenge writer is balancing that out so that it doesn't become unhealthy for us. We don't take that on. And I think the answer to your question, how do you do that? It's with that self-talk to orient yourself to exactly what you're feeling, notice that awareness, build that awareness first, and then do that cognitive behavioral therapy with yourself, which is that coming back to the truth of it, asking yourself, okay, how am I currently feeling? Is that true? Is that a distortion? Am I personalizing it? If I had a best friend in the exact same situation, they called me right now, what would I tell them? What would be my best advice? How would I talk to them and remind them that they're not responsible for this, that their girl's going through a hard time, you feel hurt because you love her, because you care for this kid, but to tell yourself the truth. The child's not in danger. The evidence is that the child's not imminently at risk. We're going to be okay. We're going to do the next right thing. We're going to work through that process. That soothing process, Ryder, I think that's how you wash yourself of the emotions.
Right.
So that way you're not carrying it with you.
Right. Not going to stress over stuff that hasn't happened yet.
Yes,
right.
Which is why I was so quick to take shots at be careful not to catastrophize.
Future tripping.
Yes,
right.
Future tripping.
Yep.
But hey, Ryder, I love that you're this way. I'm that way. It is a constant process, but I survive by first acknowledging, where did this emotion come from? Did I sign for a package of emotion that I didn't order? And so like the UPS man shows up, he's like, hey, I have a package of grief and shame. And I'm like, right here, buddy. And I signed for that. And once I bring that into myself and open that up, I'm now responsible for it. And I have to check in and go, wait a minute, that's not mine. I didn't do anything. I just feel connected to this. And so let me do some self-talk to orient myself to the truth. The truth is my spouse is having a hard time. The truth is I'm supporting this person. The truth is this kid's not in danger. I can't do anything better right now. And let me wash myself of those emotions and calibrate. Mm-hmm. When I do that, I'm more successful.
Yeah, that's some good advice.
Thank you for being an empath. I love that about you. But, don't own it all, buddy. And I like that you wrote in, and I hope, for the best for your custody battle. That's
Absolutely.
a tricky thing.
Yeah, let us know what happens.
Yes, please.
All right, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we will discuss, is therapy actually helpful? You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Not Pod Therapy, anyway. This week's TheraPod's sponsor is Jake Schneider. Jake was an American psychologist best known for his maternal separation, dependency needs, and social isolation experiments on rhesus monkeys, which manifested the importance of caregiving and companionship to social and cognitive development. He conducted most of his research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where humanistic psychologist Abraham Maslow worked with him for a short period of time. This is a good one.
Do you know what it is?
I do. I'm pretty excited about
right.
this one. If you'd like to join Jake and make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question, is therapy actually helpful?
I like that we started doing experiments with rhesus monkeys. Because, PETA was pissed, but moms weren't taking them away, so we could finish the science. Just torture those monkeys until we know things. That's science, kids!
Jesus.
Is therapy actually helpful? Hi, guys. So my question is kind of a two-parter. Mainly, my question is, do you think therapy can help everyone? And what is the actual point of therapy? I've been in therapy for depression for years with many different therapists, as well as trying various types of group therapy. However, I haven't found any of these treatments to be very beneficial. The only real improvement I've had is that very rarely I get panic attacks now, but 99% of the coping skills I use I learned on the internet or just by existing. It seems like everyone has a story of how therapy changed their life, and overall about how great therapy is. It makes me think that therapy just doesn't work for me personally. It also makes me think, what is the actual point of therapy? I've never had a therapist tell me anything that I haven't thought about or considered already. I don't think I've ever left a therapy session feeling better. I don't really understand the point of therapy, since it seems like they just tell me the things I already know. I keep going back, hoping a different therapist can help me more, but I always end up disappointed. Anyway, thanks for reading, Anonymous.
Okay, so 2 questions. Do we think that therapy can help anyone?
Everyone. Is it 100% going to work for 100%
no,
people?
No. The first question is, do you think therapy can help?
Everyone.
Oh, yeah, everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry, I misread that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we kind of have to say that therapy is helpful, otherwise the gig is up and our podcast is over. So,
you fool! You're not going to expose us.
Yeah.
Nice try, Mom.
We're kind of committed at this point. We've invested a lot into this.
No, but conspiracy theories aside.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the
Aside from
science
that,
says that it is.
Yes.
We don't have to wonder whether it is.
Yes. So here's the thing. One of the things that stuck out to me for this is one of the biggest issues that the writer is having is saying, well, I've been to therapy, I've had a lot of different therapists, but they've never told me anything I didn't already know.
Right.
Okay. So here's something very important that I've learned from solution-focused brief therapy.
Yes.
Which is that understanding is really irrelevant without change.
Yes.
When people change behavior, when people start doing things different, it leads to different outcomes.
Yes.
The understanding level of it is irrelevant in that. You can actually go into therapy, change behavior, have better outcomes, and have no better understanding.
Right.
It just works.
Yes.
And then conversely, you can have all the understanding in the world and not make any change and not have any positive outcomes.
Right.
So as far as a therapist being able to tell you something you don't already know, I don't think that's really the point of therapy, is to necessarily tell you stuff that you don't already know.
Right.
Maybe it is helping you or assisting you in applying the things that you already know.
Yes. And that's so key. And to the writer, the first thing I want to acknowledge is that I'm hearing discouragement in your letter. And so I want to come alongside you here. Just so you know, first thought, neither Nick nor I is offended by your letter. I receive it as an honest expression of your angst and your frustration. And buddy, or ma'am, we're meeting you on that. We're not offended by it. It's okay. We get this question a lot. And so the first thing I think Nick wants to reveal to you is therapy can be an educational process. Sometimes we are teaching somebody something like cognitive behavioral therapy or teaching them about their triggers or how a process works. More often than that, writer, it's not that. There is something powerful about the therapeutic encounter, and that's what we train for years to do, and that's the thousands of hours that we do in experience work, is not learning what the textbook says, it's doing the thing. Let me explain. Whenever you're getting your grad degree in therapeutic work, one of the things they're teaching you is that the form of medicine that we do, there's something called the mechanism of therapeutic value. And so if you're a surgeon, your therapeutic tool, the delivery mechanism that delivers the medical change, is the scalpel. You are the professional who can wield that, but it is the metal that's going into the body that's going to remove a bad thing and heal that body. If you're a diagnostician, like an OD, you're going to provide medicine, right? And the delivery module that's providing therapeutic change, and this word therapeutic, I mean medical, is the medicine, right? But you're the prescriber. You're the expert who evaluates and then delivers that. Our discipline of medicine is different because we are both the professional wielding the tool and we are the actual tool. It is our humanity and our engagement with you, the tone of our voice, the language of our body, the listening ears, the physical presence, the scent, the smell, the whole experience is actually part of the healing instrument that you are encountering. Why do I tell you that? Because if that wasn't the case, then everything that we offer you could get from a book. You could just go get a degree, and then you'd be great. You will have arrived. But I want you to notice something. I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, I have a doctorate. But as I'm sitting here with Nick in Sober October, he is coaching change in me. At the end of this month, you will see that I have lost actual pounds of weight. There is nothing Nick's going to teach me that I don't know. Nick and I have the same license. We have run the same facilities. We've worked together for over way too long. You're still putting up with me. There is nothing Nick's going to say or teach me that I don't actually academically know. But notice, he's going to change me. I'm going to lose weight because of Nick's coaching. Why? Because there's a lot more to this about the encountering, the coaching, the insight building, the revealing, the with you-ness, and ultimately the empathy and the accountability. All of that is going to mix together to change my actual pounds, which is going to change my actual cholesterol, which is going to change my actual blood pressure, which is going to change depression and anxiety, and all of that is going to be a real-world difference. But the delivery mechanism, in this case Nick's information, is also attached to the human and the encountering. So to this writer, I just want to say, there's a lot of patients out there that are very intelligent. They love self-help books. And I have some patients like this right now. I have a patient that is recovering successfully from alcohol, has been doing fantastic for months. And when this person first sat down with me, they could have written a book on this. They had done this a bunch of times. They knew all about it. They had read and written about it. They knew all about it. But it was our encountering that ultimately provided that sobriety. Not because I had special information in my pocket. They didn't need that. There's some patients that do. And you and I have had patients in rehabs before. That's their sixth go-around. There's nothing we're going to go through they haven't logically already learned. But it's the human encountering and all the methods that we do in therapy that ultimately make up the mysterious special sauce that delivers the therapeutic change, causes the intervention, and ultimately changes a life.
I mean, I always think of good therapy as really just being holding up a mirror.
In a lot of ways.
I mean, because really that's, in our example,
yes,
right, of me helping you with this journey that you're on.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not teaching you anything really new. What I'm doing is I'm holding up a mirror and I'm allowing you to kind of look at yourself through an outside perspective and realizing, oh, you know what? I didn't know that about myself.
And if I can, I want to say something really quick. I'll break down the fourth wall because this is a cool moment for me that I like to reflect on. If you're a regular listener to the show, and if you've ever recommended our show to somebody else, you've probably said, yeah, there are a couple of therapists, they take real people's real questions, but they're such fun guys. They don't take themselves very seriously. They're not stodgy. They just bust balls the whole time. They're just like us. That is very much a creation. And we do that. Obviously in the show, it's easy to do because we're just bullshitting with our friends. But in a real life encounter, I have patients that listen to the show that actually see me in real life. And I put you at ease. And they think Jim's just the same guy I heard on the show. That's not fake. That is genuinely part of me. But it is a part of me that I am intentionally bringing to our relationship so I can encounter you in a way that is strategically useful for you so that I can get the changes you need. But if I'm this stodgy white jacket wearing guy in a mask, that's so off-putting that you will not let your guard down. And so there's so much that goes into therapeutic work that is the mystery and the science behind it. But even how Nick just described it as we're holding up a mirror, that oversimplifies it to the point that you can understand it. The truth is, Nick went to school for years to understand how to hold up a mirror to another human being.
I hold up a mirror really well, but I...
we simplify this down, and so what happens, I think, about therapy is if you ask a regular person on the street, hey, do you think... They'll be like, I don't need therapy. What do those guys really do anyway? All they do is listen to you. Yeah, that's what we want you to think. The honest truth is we want you to think that this is simple because we don't want you to try to understand how we did all this. At the end of the day, we trained for years, studied for years, did a lot of science to be able to do this. Here's the example we teach grad students. Whenever I go speak at UNLV, I talk to the students about this. I say psychology and psychotherapy, I guess differently than psychology, is like music. There's a science to it and there's an art to it, right? And so on one hand, you have to learn how to speak and read. You have to understand this entire language of music. You have to understand the math. You have to understand how to do all this. You have to understand Mozart and the history of this. You have to understand all of this stuff that goes into the textbooks of understanding musical theory and how to get it. But if I hand you a violin, can you play? And that's what's different about our discipline in healthcare versus a lot of other things, is that there's a science to this that we have to spend years studying and understanding, and then we have to spend years more learning how to play. And that playing has to become so natural that you just walk right past us in the subway and you don't even realize you're in the presence of somebody who can play a concert, who's a master. And that's what we want. Because if you think that we're that good, if we're that intimidating to you, you will be paying more attention to us than you. And the whole point is to get you to dance without realizing that you're dancing. And so anyway, all these metaphors and ethereal things are me trying to break down the fourth wall for a second to say to the writer, if we've duped you into believing there's nothing to this, that's actually intentional. But I want you to understand that the information you're receiving in your encounters with therapists is not itself the therapeutic value. The therapeutic value is the encountering of these humans that hopefully either sustains gains that you've made or elicits progress. And for a lot of my patients, they're not even necessarily tackling a real challenge right now. They're here for maintenance. They're here for that connection, that therapeutic work, that person who really knows their story, knows who their names of their lives are, knows their values. And so when they come across troubled water, they have that coach that they can come to who they're not meeting for the first time. And so the answer that I will give, the end of my monologue here, is to the writer, yes, therapy does work for everybody in the sense that a therapeutic encounter is the most fundamental human thing we have. Whether you're meeting with the elder of your tribe, or whether you're meeting with a rabbi in your synagogue, or whether you're meeting with a mentor or a friend or a parent or somebody that is with you in life, humans are biologically and psychologically wired to encounter in candid, cathartic, and transparent ways another human being. And so yes, to that extent, therapy always works. Do we always get the results that we're looking for? Are we always impressed with the encounter? Do we even notice what we got from that? No, not always. But that's not to say there's not value there. And it's not to say change isn't happening, even if you can't see it.
Well, I think the other part of this, too, is when we're talking about disappointment implies there's an expectation. So
right.
If the expectation isn't what it's actually meant to do, then yes, you're going to end up with disappointment. So I think another part of it too is just kind of that relationship that you may have with the therapist. If you don't have that right relationship, if you're not really clicking with that individual, it's going to make change difficult to achieve. So you may have had 3 therapists and none of them really fit well with you. That doesn't mean that the 4th won't. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you won't get something out of therapy. Again, I think the big thing is instead of looking at it as something that I need to learn something new, maybe focus a little bit more on how do I apply what I've already learned. Because if knowledge was all we needed,
right,
then smart people would be doing better than less intelligent people.
Right, but there's no evidence to prove that.
Exactly. It's in how we are able to apply what we've learned and how we can live life with what we know.
And so the final answer I have on this writer is I think Nick just said it well. And if your challenge that's in front of you is chronic depression and the therapists have not removed that, Hopefully they've managed it. Hopefully they've kept you safe. I have patients that I can't change. I have patients with biochemical disorders that are causing them psychosis. And so what I am there to do is to maintenance them and to keep them safe, to be that last line of defense from them doing something regrettable, right? And so I can't necessarily undo that for them. And then I'm also there to be a medication manager for them to help observe with their psychiatrist what can help. So sometimes that's as much as we can offer. But in your case, if the chronic depression is still there, if you haven't already, I want you to do a medical check-in with a psychiatrist. I think that's absolutely vital. That I hope you're not missing that ingredient. And then if you're not getting skills that you're finding useful in your depression work, and I feel like that's a good point, isn't it, Nick? People with depression, they do get discouraged, and there's not like this, like anxiety has this clear process that if you follow my recipe, I can decrease your anxiety. If I try that same cognitive behavioral therapy on depression, it's often left wanting, right? Because depression is this ethereal cloud that you're just sort of in, and it's hard to just notice, oh, I'm doing thinking errors. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
So I get your point, Ryder, and your second question was, what's the actual point of therapy? I think this is a really good fundamental question that we've had to answer before in grad school and with students. What is the point? I locate the point of therapy as part of the healthcare tradition of allowing humans to grow and to live healthfully, mentally, right? So instead of measuring that as a graph line of their blood pressure and knowing whether or not the value of that medicine changed that blood pressure curve, to me, it's measuring the value of their living style, their mental anguish, and whether or not they're experiencing some kind of happiness. At the same time, I can't grant those wishes. So it's a very weird process that moves in 360 degrees. But to the writer, don't receive us as being defensive. Your truth is that you're struggling right now. You're frustrated with this. We're coaching you and saying, don't give up. Now, whether or not you need a therapist right now, that's not necessarily what we're saying. But medicine, make sure you're checking in on that and making sure you don't get discouraged to the point where you don't believe in the process. There's therapeutic value even if we don't need therapeutic information. The encountering with another human being is what we're wired to do. And there's a cathartic and transparent truth that occurs whenever you do that honestly. And even if you're not impressed with that person, I'm glad you're showing up. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
All right, my man. End of the show. We owe some Patreons some shout-outs.
Yes, we do.
And one of them actually walked into the studio to make sure we do it. Frozen 49's like, all right, guys, let's go. I'm here on behalf of the mob. She's got her pitchfork and her torch. So, all right, I'm going to run through. We have no new THERAPALs this week, but we have THERAPODs to thank. Our newest THERAPOD, Kenneth Liu, thanks for joining the party. And that's probably somebody who decided, what the heck, let's give the Sober October thing a shot. So thanks, Ken. And we want to thank all of our existing THERAPODs. Oh, God, of course the first one's this one. We want to thank Adam Rybikzik. Yeah, I feel like I nailed it. Andrea Anderson, we want to thank Brad Kefauver, Brian Lehman, also known as the Philadelphia Freudians. Want to thank Robert Brooks Lyle, creator of Pegasus. Want to thank Chelsea Saracen, a great friend of the show. Corey Owens, also known as McTits. Want to thank Craig Little, Curtis Kiwi Fruit, Scoop Hanlon, David Pollock, Easy Whip, Fred Bashara Jr., Gavin Bristow, Heather Psychotic Scoop, Crace, Ian Whitefall, Ice Blue Scoop, Ice, we're with you, man. Keep noticing your Twitters. You hang in there. You're doing awesome. James Cole, Jessica Vint, Scoopy Jess, Jim Hunter, Joseph Pangrazio, Carrie Terhark, a.k.a. Nick's sister, Kate Keller, a.k.a. our buddy who's in school learning to be one of our colleagues, Katie Chiwialkowski. Nailed it. Yeah. Kenneth Liu, new friend of the show. Kenneth Soto, Lori Eltzroth, Leon Kassab, first lawyer to ever grace our presence. Linda Brandmeier, my Canadian sponsor, is going to evac me once Trump wins re-election. Lindsay Bashara, Manuela Muzakiu, Malaya Mike, Okie Scoop, Peter Van Pelt, Richard Bruins, Robert Paulson, Scoop John B., whose Twitter's on fire, Scoopaholic, Scoopiter Ascending, who's going to be joining us later this month, Scoopstronaut, Shayla Bullock, who joined us on the show with her hubby, Frozen 49th Scoop, who's here in the studio, Terrible Monkey Scoop, Tom Morrison, and my mom, Tracy Replogle.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, chairman of the board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex-officio board members Ellie O'Dare and Dan Martin.
If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited, enjoy our spontaneous side projects like book club and fantasy football, as well as join us for Sober October and hear my personal journal entries and Nick's wonderful admonitions, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy, and thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to Frozen 49th Scoop, who joined us to make the show possible today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link to somebody who might need it. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Woot woot!
I'm going to go hit Jim's wife.
Get in line. It's like that scene in the Airplane whenever there's that lady. Sir, you're needed at the front.
Calm down.
Calm down. What are you doing? Like they fade back and there's